Hello and welcome. You're watching Business Plus. A new platform has taken the delivery market by storm, from food to grocery. It is supplying food and other items at a much cheaper rate, giving tough competition to Zomato and Swiggy and winning the game, at least for now. You can now use ONDC, the Open Network for Digital Commerce, to get cheaper delivery of food. Not just food, many other products. In fact, we tried it out ourselves and the price difference was staggering. The ONDC is a digital platform developed by the government aimed at creating a level playing field for all operators in the market. It facilitates a direct interface between sellers and consumers while ruling out the mediators through an open network. ONDC could be the biggest disruptor of the century, and for the likes of Zomato, Swiggy and others, it could disrupt their entire game. Now, for ordering through ONDC, you need to log in to one of its partner apps, that is PayTM or Migicpin. In fact, ONDC is fast gaining popularity to a point that it crossed 5,000 daily orders in the retail category, which is mainly food and beverage as well as groceries. On the show today, what is the buzz around ONDC? How does it function? Why is it cheaper? And what's the future of delivery apps looking like? Joining us at this point in time is Shireesh Joshi, who is the Chief Business Officer of ONDC, Varun Khera, who is the Head of Noida chapter of NRAI, which is the Association for Restaurants, Lloyd Mathias, who is a business strategist and angel investor. In the studio with me, my colleague Kartik Malhotra. Before we start, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to News 9. Kartik, one of the buzzwords in entire, in fact, one of the search words, as you rightly pointed out, on Google today, and buzzwords,
a lakh plus
searches. Everybody wants to know what is ONDC and what's the big deal about the platform.
Interesting times we live in, Shweta. I mean, you think that there is this eureka moment, somebody has come up with this new technology, new platform, and before you know it, there's a disruptor. We've seen that with chatbots, ChatGPT. We've seen that with nothing else but UPI. So you thought that cards are gaining traction, wallets are gaining traction, and there you have UPI, and it sort of sweeps the market off. We are noticing a similar trend here with ONDC right now. And many in the industry are really touting this to be the UPI moment for e-commerce. Okay. And largely what the government tried to do, and it seems early days but seems successfully as that, is that you've tried to create e-commerce logistics in a very plug-and-play fashion. So gone are the days apparently where a technology player or an aggregator or even a small business owner needs to invest in developing the technology, create the architecture on which the technology rides, and really go around scouting for multiple interfaces which are required for a transaction or a delivery to go through. And here comes ONDC, Open Network for Digital Commerce. In fact, the hype around it started around September 2022. And that's when we started doing a lot of research and started studying the platform to really understand and put it in our minds, how is this really going to work? How is it going to disrupt? Now, of course, we'll come to that subsequently as part of this discussion, but I thought let's give it a shot. Everybody on social media is using it, is putting out tweets, really comparing prices of the same product ordered on an ONDC versus non-ONDC platform. So we've done exactly that. So this afternoon, while I was speaking to you and we were discussing what to do on the show, I felt like having a cold coffee from McDonald's. And we thought, hey, let's give it a shot and let's see how the prices and how the overall sort of, figures really stack up. And let's pull up those graphics and see that, on a Zomato or on a Swiggy versus an ONDC platform, there is a substantial price difference. Now, right. Zomato, for example, the cold coffee, MRP of the McDonald's cold coffee is 98 rupees, right? That doesn't change across the board. What changes, of course, is the delivery fee. What changes is the discount code. What changes are other sort of, aspects around it. So here we have it. So let's look at it. MRP of the cold coffee is 98 rupees across all, right? Ignore column D for now. We'll come to that. Present day on Zomato, a 98 rupees cold coffee is going to cost you 225 rupees. Okay. Right. On Swiggy, the same cold coffee is going to cost you 208 rupees. On ONDC today, it's costing you 107 rupees. So you say, hey, I'm getting it 50% cheaper through ONDC than any other platform. But then, as business journalists, you know, the devil is in the details. So you really love to crunch your numbers. And that is what I've tried to do in column D. So if you go back to the first slide, you'll see that the same 98 rupee cold coffee, if you remove the 7% discount,
that ONDC
which
is offering
ONDC is offering on PayTM right now, which I think McDonald's is offering, not ONDC. McDonald's on PayTM is offering a 7% discount, which is 6 rupees worth of discount. Look at ONDC itself, compare column C and column D. The delivery fee of 98 rupees has actually been slashed to 23 rupees.
And we don't know if that's going to be
discounting.
Okay, it may not be long term.
That's my assumption. That is why column D, I'm saying this is a long term assumption, and Shireesh is here, he'll be able to tell us. But assumption being, you will not be able to sustain this deep discounting that we have frowned upon with the likes of other players. That gets reduced. Right now, 98 reduces to 23. When the deep discounting is off, I think they're going to charge us 98 rupees, more expensive than Zomato and Swiggy.
Okay, how did we arrive at the 98 figure?
98 is listed. When I order it through PayTM, it is 98 slashed to 23.
Right.
So it seems like a clear-cut discount. The packaging cost is exactly the same across all platforms. The taxes are exactly the same. If we can move on to the next slide, we'll see that there is also a discount code. There's a flat 50 rupee ONDC 50 discount code on PayTM, which is something we have seen and become accustomed to even with Zomato and Swiggy. Every time you try a new restaurant, a new dish, return to a place after long, there are these exciting discounts which are given to you. So once that goes, and if that becomes nil, the same cold coffee on ONDC with the same listing of prices on the PayTM app is going to cost us 239 rupees, 240 rupees almost, which is actually more expensive than Zomato. So is there really a great value advantage for consumers who are ordering their food delivery through ONDC, and is that going to be sustained over the long run? That is what I think we should try and discover today.
Let's ask Shireesh. He's the better person to answer that. Shireesh, you saw our graphics there. We tried ordering something in order to compare where the prices stand. With the current discount that the platform is offering, it is much cheaper. However, our analysis is that it may not be possible to continue with the same set of discounting, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Does that then mean that the predatory pricing, once that goes off, once the customer acquisition is done, we are going to get maybe a product at the same rate as others are offering, or maybe even higher?
So I think as the analysis showed, right, the original price of the item is the same, the packaging price is same. The only difference in the full-blown example that was done was that the delivery cost was different. Now, organizations have had time to hone a delivery system very perfectly catered to a solution. We are in our early days. We have some logistics providers, and over a period of time, a competitive marketplace, we expect that to also bring into bear. Now, there are other differences that this is not showing. So this is the consumer position. And the other differences are, what are the other fees involved for the buyers, for the sellers? Those would be different. And this is not meant to be a price war. I think it's being inappropriately quoted. We want to make sure people understand ONDC exists, that there is a way.
Okay, it looks like we've lost Shireesh, but I want to come to Varun at this point in time. Varun, who heads the Noida chapter for NRAI. Varun, you heard what Kartik had to say there. I think the fundamental question remains that, is this temporary? Is this only to acquire customers, and once that is done, we're going to come back to the same pricing?
No, I actually don't feel like that. See, we have to understand this from a bird's eye view. The duopoly of Zomato and Swiggy has been, looming on the restaurant industry for a very long time. A lot of businesses have been facing the fear, the fire. A lot of strategies which are generally being used by Zomato and Swiggy have been crushing a lot of small segment restaurateurs, small segment delivery models, cloud kitchen outlets. So we have to understand this from, as I said, from a bird's eye view. ONDC is coming with a fresh air, as in like a platform. See, it's not a typical app. It's a platform. A platform will, give us a lot of benefits, because with this particular platform, a customer can actually see multiple e-commerce websites at a particular location. Can be PayTM, can be anything. Okay, so we have to understand this. It is not required for a customer to actually log into a particular app, download those apps, be very restricted to these apps. He can, like UPI, they can use it from multiple angles. Whosoever is giving them a better discount, better delivery models, better interface, they will definitely go into here. Understanding from here, the commission which is charged by Zomato and Swiggy versus the commission which is charged by ONDC at the moment, it's at a beta stage right now, is definitely a game changer, because this, from a 24 to 27%, and every year Zomato and Swiggy has been raising up their commissions. Be it Swiggy also charges a GST on top of it, as in like everybody charges, but the GST charge on the gross amount, not even on the net amount of the restaurant bill. So that is like a very, very huge amount for the industry. Apart from this, what is, I feel, the better part of
what is ONDC charging at this point, Varun?
It is charging 2 to 4% from both the ends, from the customer as well as the business.
And Varun,
So
what
in
did
totality,
Swiggy and
it'll be
Zomato
4 to 8.
start out with? In early days of Swiggy and Zomato, what was the commission that they were charging off restaurants?
Well, that was a trap. Initially, they said that we're not going to be charging anything, and then slowly started 2%, then 5%, 8%, 12%, going on to 18%, 20%, and today they're onboarding nothing less than 30%. It's 31% for new outlets to be onboarded. It's 31%. Can you believe that amount?
So, Varun, I understand that for businesses, Varun, I understand for small businesses, obviously there's a case, and we'll come to that subsequently. But right now, the chatter that we are picking up on social media and the excitement around ONDC is the fact that, hey, it is much cheaper for a consumer to order via an ONDC supported platform than a Swiggy or a Zomato. I'm not batting here for either, but I want to understand that for the consumer, is this pricing going to be sustainable? Because as we see, the delivery fees and the discount codes is something that is not new to the consumer. Anytime any application or any platform lures customers, they offer these deep discounts. So how is ONDC doing it any differently for the end consumer? We'll come to the business case also.
I'll tell you about the customer side. Now, from the customer side, what happens is packaging, all the costs are same. But the product cost on a Zomato and a Swiggy app, you must have seen this has been a raising concern with a lot of customers. They're stating that, if I order, let's say, a cold coffee, take an example here, is charging, it's at 98 rupees because it's McDonald's. But let's say if it would have been a regular cafe, the cafe is charging 100 rupees, but on Zomato, it is rated as 115 or 120. And similarly on Swiggy also at 120, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to absorb the higher commissions which are being charged by Zomato and Swiggy. And this, in turn, is the idea which was given by Zomato and Swiggy only to small-time vendors that, hey, why don't you actually charge extra? We don't mind collecting extra money from the customer, because we're giving them a facility where we're delivering the product at their end. So rather than, you're negotiating massive commission with it, why don't you actually charge extra? And we can absorb the cost at both the ends. So this is how the benchmark of the pricing got deflected in a way that the restaurant, the cloud kitchens, all the other businesses started charging higher. So in ONDC, I feel that this is not going to be the case because the commissions are very low. So nobody's going to get into the trap of increasing the pricing to any extent and basically making the customer confused. Should they order directly? Should they order via Zomato? Should they order via Swiggy or whatsoever?
Okay, Shireesh is back. Shireesh, the commission is low. Is that going to be the case in future as well? Because we heard Varun saying that initially many of these platforms started out saying that we will not be charging any commission, but of course operational costs had to be covered. Is that going to be the case with ONDC as well, or the commission is going to be low? Are you promising to your customers, to consumers at large, that the commission will remain same in the future?
So we're promising nothing because we'll depend on market forces. But you have to remember that ONDC is a not-for-profit organization, which is very different from other platforms which are with a profit motive. So that itself sets one thing apart. The other is that when you create common infrastructure that everybody uses, you take costs out of the system. Now, it's one thing for a seller to have to spend to acquire customers or a platform to acquire customers. But if you create a handshake between a few large platforms that have customers and a few large platforms that have sellers, you simply create the handshake. There is no customer acquisition cost. That has gone out of the system. So the whole idea of ONDC is to create a network where buyers and sellers can interact, where costs have been taken out of the system. So it's not about funding or discounting or price wars. It's really about creating a much more efficient system.
Okay, Lloyd, let me try and come to you at this point and help us understand. Number one, what is the business of the government to get into business? That's the first question I want to throw at you. And secondly, how efficient is the model going to be if profitability is not likely to be a concern for ONDC? Eventually, it is going to be the taxpayers' money that funds ONDC as a platform.
Kartik, is that for me?
Yes, Lloyd.
Hey, thanks. Thanks, Kartik. I think interesting and great to have Shireesh's perspective and Varun's. I think the fundamental thing what the government is trying to do is to actually replicate the UPI model in the e-commerce ecosystem, right? What the National Payments Council of India, the NPCI, did was actually kind of give consumers a choice, saying that how do they want to pay. And obviously, NPCI created the UPI, which made it seamless, which made it platform agnostic, so to speak, and kind of disaggregated the whole ecosystem. So I think effectively, as Shireesh said, as a not-for-profit, as a government set up entity owned by the Commerce Ministry, I think what ONDC is doing is disaggregating the ecosystem, right? So obviously, each of the big players, current players, they have their own preferences, they have their own logistics partners, they have their own payment ecosystems. On the positive, they're able to control the kind of consumer experience, knowing all that they know about your shopping or your eating behaviors. But on the downside, they also therefore have a very significant profit motive. Over time, you will get more loyal to one of the order delivery platforms more than the restaurant, and therefore they're able to A, squeeze the restaurant margins, B, kind of sell you other like-minded products and kind of upsell to you and increase your bill. I think what ONDC is doing is making the whole process more democratic. So you choose the food, you choose the outlet, you choose your so-called logistics partner or your mode of delivery, you choose your payment ecosystem. And effectively, by creating the handshakes, as they say, you're actually disaggregating the system, making it more transparent and certainly more price efficient. Now, will all consumers clearly go for the price thing? Is there to be seen. It clearly is a huge, huge advantage. But like we talked about the other piece, elements of promotion and such like is what the platforms will have to work their way towards as a counterbalance. But as a first step, I think it's a great start. I think right now a lot of the noise is about the price discounting, so to speak, of which ONDC plays no role. But I think over time, what will settle is making it a more democratic, easy to choose, more efficient ecosystem that will naturally have some price advantages. But more importantly, it will make the existing platforms, and loosely, if I could call it, rather duopolistic. It will make them relook at their options. Okay. Most importantly, I think for sellers like restaurants and as the e-commerce pie widens, it will also give them a much more differentiated choice as being, in a manner of speaking, being held hostage by 2 or 3 big players.
All right. Shireesh, we understand that the idea here is to challenge the duopoly, is to have more competition, is to make the existing big players look at their competition and look at the way they operate and perhaps offer a cheaper service. How many partners have you onboarded so far? I went to the ONDC app. It's quite interesting. There are certain things that you can definitely buy on ONDC right now. For example, you can buy, your daily consumable items. You can buy food. You can buy some services. But there is a lot more coming in. If you could perhaps tell our viewers as to what are the big plans for ONDC and what sort of services can we now later on avail? What are you working on?
Well, in a way, we are working on everything. So yes, grocery food is large, but we've also started auto rickshaw hailing in Bangalore and taxi hailing in Kochi. So mobility is live on a network. We have electronics, we have fashion, apparel, beauty care products, pharma products, OTC, of course, not RX. agriculture products, in fact, even agriculture inputs like seeds and saplings. So
Okay.
one by one, categories are coming on board. And within each category, the basic use cases right now being onboarded. But over a period of time, we will add more business flows, more kinds of operations. So you should expect that at some point in time in the future, all products, all services, all use cases will be live on the network.
Okay. So you're essentially saying that I can buy my grocery, hail a cab, and also perhaps get my medicines through ONDC in future.
Yes, it will be possible. And we've gotten used to the idea that we do different things in different places. But imagine going on a holiday, buying a flight ticket from the same app, adding that to the cart is your hotel room, adding that to the cart is your taxi to the airport, adding to cart are the guide services at the destination. You do that in a single cart and check out, not go to one place for your flight ticket, another for your hotel, another for your taxi, and so on.
All right. And your daily orders at the moment are about 5,000. Is that correct? Or is it more than that? Because the numbers are as of last week.
Yes, no, we've crossed those numbers. Just the retail segment is substantially higher, and then we do a fair chunk out of mobility as well. So we'll begin officially publishing these numbers soon. But so far, the pickup has been amazing, and in fact, the run from March, April, May, the momentum has been good, and that's why you're seeing some of the actions and the excitement that is surrounding ONDC.
So, Lloyd, let me come back to you and bring you in here at this point. Now, how do you see this game playing out in the long term? What happens to the existing players? It's going to be difficult for them, I suppose, since they are already reeling in losses, to cut down on the commissions that they charge. So do you see a scenario where whatever investments they've made in their technology, in their development of the ecosystem and the whole logistics supply chain is now going to be junked, and even existing players are going to pretty much ride on ONDC?
Interesting question, Kartik. No straight answers, but in simple terms, I think the existing players, have the choice, as ONDC emphasizes, joining the ONDC bandwagon, so to speak. So I think that's one option. But very clearly, I think they will play off some of their deep knowledge and advantages, right? So one is short-term price equality will certainly be one of their strategies. How do they kind of counter this, let's say, the aggressive price advantage that a consumer has by going to ONDC? That's one part. But I think over time, they will need to relook at the other elements of their mix, right? What is it that they're doing right when it comes to kind of understanding the consumer, offering him the right kind of requirements as and when he goes to shop. And two is how, to an extent, do they make it far more price comparative, right? Clearly, it's starting off, and what's happening right now, and what's being showcased is the whole price advantage. I think the disaggregation opens up numerous possibilities, not just for outlets and therefore eateries, but also for all the other players in the ecosystem. So I think therefore it will be a bit of a rethink of their strategy. The short term, yes, there could be pressure on their profitabilities as they rework their model, but clearly they'll have to do a rethink. And like I said, if it's going to benefit the consumer and if it's going to be at the seller, I think then India wins overall. So I think directionally we're moving in the right direction. Just that after NPCI came and UPI got launched, it doesn't mean all the private players collapsed. They have their own role to play. I think each one will find his own USP or his own significance to the consumer and to the marketplace.
Okay, let's get Varun here. Varun, talk to us from the from the suppliers end. You have your own chain of restaurants, that are both in. They offer dine-in services as well as delivery services. How do you see this model emerging from here? Are you today saying that with the advent of ONDC, you're going to junk, let's say, your relationship with Swiggy or Zomato or other such aggregators, smaller ones? Or do you think you have a better negotiating power and greater leverage to try and get terms and conditions which suit your business better?
Well, I would like to go with the second option, wherein we would like to negotiate better with Zomato and Swiggy. We have to understand this one point, which is the biggest controlling tactic by Zomato and Swiggy, which ONDC provides us with the liberty, is data masking. Today, Zomato and Swiggy are controlling us because we don't know who our customers are. They control the numbers, they control the data of the customer, they take the order, they just give the order without giving us the details of the customer. In case if we want to connect also, we cannot connect. If there's any issue which is raised by the customer, it is handled at the Zomato or the Swiggy end, and they pass on, either they have to give a refund or discounted everything. They actually generally passed on to the customer directly. Now they control the data, which is not happening at ONDC. Today, if the data would have been clear, because we have to understand these customers, when you ordered a cold coffee from McDonald's, you are the customer of McDonald's, but not the customer of Swiggy or Zomato. You are only using the app to place an order. However, in turn, for McDonald's, McDonald's is not getting this customer. McDonald's is basically being, carried on to Zomato and Swiggy for any orders possible today. So this is going to be a biggest game changer when ONDC comes up with complete transparency. I love the way Lloyd explained the whole narrative of what exactly ONDC is going to be, a very democratic system. It gives us a very sigh of relief to the business owners at this particular point, because transparency is something which we are looking at, and we have been fighting with these two aggregators to give us transparency. We've never been able to get that. High commission rates are getting higher and higher every year, not even year. These days, it's happening every quarter. So it becomes a very daunting numbers for a restaurateur or a food delivery outlet to operate or to survive, because we are at the receiving end. But with ONDC, I'm feeling very positive, because it gives us a fair, balanced chance to us to thrive together. It's like a win-win situation, which with Zomato and Swiggy, it is not, because we have been fighting cases at the CCI also for multiple things, though this is not the right platform to discuss all that. But yeah, in all totality, I will see, and I feel that with ONDC rise, definitely Zomato and Swiggy are going to get in line in every way.
Okay. There's something interesting we did right before the show, and that is we went to your menu, one of the restaurants that you operate, and we saw the menu online, and then we tried clicking on the menu on Swiggy and tried ordering the same stuff. We realized that your MRP, or the rate at which you're selling products, Varun, in your restaurant is different from what Swiggy is selling it to us, and after maybe applying discount is more or less the same. It just brings me to a larger question, which is, as consumers, we are told they are giving us high discounts, and I have nothing against Swiggy and Zomato, but it is the way they are fooling consumers at large who don't understand that if you are to go and buy or eat the same stuff in the restaurant, it's going to be much cheaper as opposed to when you're ordering it at home.
Totally right. Because it is again because
what
of the
exactly,
rate.
sorry if I can come in there, what exactly is the markup price based on? How is it that certain products, foods are inflated? Why is their prices inflated? Is there a way they do it? What sort of algorithm goes behind it?
So see, there is no particular algorithm at the restaurant end. I will say what happens, it's at a very larger perspective, is that to absorb the commissions, to absorb the discounting, the deep discounting which is being provided on these particular apps, most of the restaurateurs generally go ahead and actually jack up their price. What happens is, because when we are delivering directly, the customer is ordering us through our direct website, they're definitely getting a better rate, better delivery services. However, when they are ordering food from Zomato and Swiggy, we have to absorb the commission rates of Zomato and Swiggy somewhere. And these are the ideas which are being discussed and deliberated between Swiggy, Zomato and the restaurateurs together.
Sure. So, Shweta, I think, what we are really arriving at is from a restaurant perspective, it's a great bet, right? Now, of course, this pricing is designed, like Varun was saying, between the restaurant owner and the platform, because the restaurants will jack up prices so that they are able to better offset in absolute terms the commission that they are paying to a Swiggy or a Zomato.
Okay.
So hence, restaurants don't mind keeping a different price in their in-dining service and a different delivery price, right? And sometimes they want to keep, let's say, if they have their own riders who are delivering, if somebody was to make a phone call to them, then they may continue with the restaurant in-dining prices. What is worrying me actually at some level is a point that Varun had raised some time back, that there is transparency on the customer. And that transparency and the democratization of data is worrying me a little bit.
Okay.
That we are already inundated with scams. We are already inundated with profiling for us to become victims of data breaches or victims of scams. Now, if our data, which I believe is is encrypted at the end of a Swiggy or a Zomato kind of platform, if that data is now freely available to every restaurant we order from, does that not become a problem for us?
Okay, I think Shireesh can answer that question for us. Shireesh, what happens to partners or rather businesses that are listed on ONDC? Do they get to have every data, all data of the consumers that they're interacting with? How does ONDC ensure that the data of consumers is protected?
So first of all, data only reaches when it needs to, right? When you walk into a physical store, the store does not know who you are till such time as you buy something, go to the cash counter and an invoice is being made in your name. That's when your information travels. So after you have decided to become a customer of that store, your data is now with that store because they have to make that invoice. Same thing with ONDC.
Not
When somebody is searching for,
sir.
let's say,
If I walk into a McDonald's or a Subway, more often than not, my name or even my mobile number is not really sought. I just go, I place an order, I pay using my UPI, and I'm through with my ordering. So my data is fairly well protected when I'm going to a restaurant and making a purchase. So is the case actually even with in dining at restaurants, where I go, I order, the waiter takes my order, comes back with a bill, and I pay it. Very seldom will you actually find a restaurant bill with my name on it.
restaurant bill, I agree with you. That I agree.
That's what I'm talking about, because now if my details are available with every restaurant, I don't know who is the manager.
They're not available.
There. I don't know what level of cyber security they have in place. So if ONDC makes my data very transparently available, yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah. So there is, first of all, ONDC does not keep any data. Second, your data only goes to the entity, the seller. In this case, the restaurant is the seller. The buyer platform is not the seller. So if you get invoice from Swiggy, Swiggy knows who you are, because in the eyes of e-commerce, Swiggy is the seller for you. So the seller has to make the invoice. That's required because you're paying money. You need an invoice, and to make an invoice, you need a name. And so that is only going to the person that you actually placed an order from. When you search for cold coffee, as in that instance, all the restaurants that got to know there was a search for cold coffee and responded will not even know whether that cold coffee actually got bought from someone or not. Only the party on which the order was actually placed will know it, and that party has to pack it and send it to you. So an address is needed to send the product to, and an invoice has to be created. So that's a legal requirement. It's not an optional thing. Whichever party is generating the invoice and issuing the delivery has to know the name for the invoice and has to know the address. And that's the only place where the data is. So seller platforms have to take care. Everybody has to obey the law of the land. And so data privacy rules apply to everyone, including those who have their applications on ONDC. ONDC itself does not have data, and this notion that all data is made available to everyone is completely erroneous. It's not even available to ONDC, let alone to others.
Okay. Okay, so we understand that. Just to extend on Kartik's question, so basically a place that I'm ordering from, and let's say I order a cold coffee, they have my number, they have my address, they have my name, and you're saying the law of the land applies to them, but any sort of directive or an advisory given from ONDC as to how and why and what can they do to protect my data?
We're not providing a specific advisory at this stage, and the seller applications, it is their responsibility to take on best practices as needed. A lot of them are actually fairly established place in other fields, right? So you expect that while, let's say, the payment applications that are live on a network, while they may not be e-commerce applications, but they are large in their own right. So these are people who understand encryption, the people who understand systems, they understand protection, and they are taking the steps that are needed to ensure that the kind of scenario that was envisaged doesn't happen. But more importantly, the bigger notion that data is freely available, that itself I would like to dispel. Data is not freely available, and the only data that is traveling for the purposes of making an invoice and dispatching the product to the correct address. Obviously, you want the rider to call you when they reach to be able to say your item has arrived. So that's the only reason why that information travels. But nobody else gets that information, not even ONDC.
Okay.
Varun, does that sort of give you a little more clarity on how you were talking about data transparency and getting information about a customer? Does that sort of help you?
Yes, it does. Because with Zomato and Swiggy, what is happening is because Zomato and Swiggy are delivering on their own.
Okay.
So we don't get any details of the customer. We only get an order ID, the name and the address, which we get from the Zomato and the Swiggy apps. But with ONDC, we will be getting a little more details about the customer, In case there's any service recovery which needs to be done, we can take care of the service recovery. We can ensure that the customer is getting, the kind of experience which we would like to provide to the customer. Here on, with Zomato and Swiggy generally doesn't happen because there's so much data masking. The Zomato team is actually taking care of the service recovery with the customer, and we generally don't come to know that what went exactly wrong in that particular order. Because for a customer, the coffee is not good, that's about it. But what exactly was not good in the coffee? Was the packaging an issue? Was the taste an issue? Was the temperature an issue? All those micro issues which we need to get into it to give the best experience to the customer is generally overlooked when we talk about through the parameters of the delivery from the aggregators.
Okay.
So this actually brings me back to the whole customer experience debate. So Varun, I'll start with you and then I'll invite Lloyd and Shireesh also to come in. Now we know that the likes of Flipkart, Amazon, etc., they employ thousands of executives only to manage customer service. So it's the case even with the food delivery apps. Now, of course, in the food delivery apps, my personal experience has been that more often than not, you're actually dealing just with a bot and there's a certain set of questions and the answers are in pure binary, yes, no, can't say. But in the case of, let's say, the larger e-commerce players like Flipkart, Zomato, etc., customer service is a big deal. How does a platform like ONDC manage customer experience?
See, what ONDC, to my knowledge, which because it's not been launched in Delhi, I've been overlooking things of ONDC since whenever they've started. ONDC is a platform which is basically letting all the other apps to come into it. It's not the aggregator themselves; they are disaggregating. So we have to understand that they are in a position where they are connecting the customer directly to the seller.
So the buck stops at the service provider. The buck stops pretty much at the restaurant in this case.
Correct. Let's say today, if I've not been able to provide good services, and you have to understand these orders, the delivery orders are coming from local customers, are coming from a radius of 5 to 10 kilometers who know the local restaurant what it is. Okay, it is not from a far off distance like in Zomato and Amazon and Flipkart. The seller can be from anywhere throughout the country. It is not. The lead time is more, but here the lead time is very less. The lead time is maximum half an hour to 45 minutes.
Yeah.
What we're talking about.
So extrapolate that, Lloyd, extrapolate that to, let's say, the large e-commerce players like Flipkart and Amazon. Now, what happens if a similar sort of a service or a similar service experience was to be offered? What happens in the case of, of any grievance where the buyer is connected directly with the seller minus the intermediary, which in that case being Amazon and Flipkart, and if there are issues that spring up on the quality, on the return policy, on any other reverse logistics, or even a wrong delivery for that matter, a bar of soap coming instead of an iPhone, we've seen those cases. Now, who's the arbiter in such cases?
Yeah, so quickly, Kartik, I think the first level is, again, going back to the UPI analogy. What UPI does is that you can pick out your phone and you can scan the QR code and you can pay through whatever it is, right? Whether it's PayTM, Google Pay, Phone Pay, whatever. What UPI does is really connect you, therefore, with your bank, right? Whichever the banking service is. Therefore, your transaction is affected in a seamless manner, right? I think, therefore, what ONDC is doing, and I think Varun alluded to it, is actually disaggregating the system. It's not an app within itself, so there's no loyalty to be built. But over time, you will continue to build your loyalty. Now, coming to the point of the user experience, I think that's where current apps will really make the difference, which is the fact that they've invested a lot in their user experience, in their tech-led experience, in the efficiencies, right? Timely delivery, the customer support. I think that will continue to remain their differentiator. Because the fact is that they've learned so much about your eating habits or your buying habits. They know so much about the kind of restaurants and the geographical zone from which they order. I think that kind of efficiency play is what they can control end to end. And that's what ONDC has no role to play. What ONDC is doing is really disaggregating the system. Like I said, in time to come, maybe they can also be part of that ecosystem, right? If they see the benefit to it. So at one level, it's an existential threat. At the other, it's something that actually widens the pie and therefore gets a lot more users both ends, on the selling end and the buying end, right? But things like user experience, tech experience will continue to be owned by the platforms. And that, to my mind, will be the long-term differentiation once the euphoria of pricing dies out. And specifically to people like restaurants, and I think Varun alluded to that, is that they will now have a direct line of sight to a little bit of their consumer, unlike right now where they are totally kind of disintermediated by the Swiggy and Zomato. right? So because now they will actually have to own up to that poor customer experience and sort that issue out. That's not what ONDC can do
Right.
or is built to do.
Got it. So, Shireesh, I want to ask you some very direct questions if you will permit me. Number one, what is the long-term thinking on commissions that you're going to charge the sellers?
We don't charge commission. The
I think the
commissions are
long-term view.
charged by the seller. Yeah, so the long-term view also is that if at all there is a charge, it will be extremely minimal. If parallel I can give is, if think about the internet, when you reserve a URL, there's a fee that you pay to be part of that registry, and you maintain that URL as long as you're paying that fee, which is a very small part of your business cost if running a business. And so if at all ONDC charges, then it will be a very, very small fee, which will be negligible even for a small seller. So ONDC being non-profit does not require to generate profits for itself or for its shareholders. And we expect to operate in a fairly lean way in the long run. And whatever little costs we have, we expect to recover through very, very minimal fees, if at all, in the future.
Okay, so that is the first question answered very succinctly that there
Absolutely.
is not going to be any long-term
And before you go to your
which is okay.
Before you go to your next question, I have a quick question, Shireesh. Given the momentum, the buzz around ONDC in the last couple of weeks or so, how many businesses have you been able to list? If you can give us a ballpark figure there, what sort of interest are you seeing in ONDC, and from what parts of the country?
It's a few thousand, and every day we are adding new sellers, and we are adding sellers of very, very different things. Right? We are adding restaurants who only source locally with a very, very organic, low carbon footprint. We get weavers from one part of the country who make unique weaves. We are getting food processing small units which are operating in rural areas of parts of the country. Artisans, they are as much part of it as are brands. There are brands which have brought their D2C operations. There are modern trade stores that have now become part of a network. So one by one, all sorts of providers, creators are joining the network. And the goal really is, yes, we've got some momentum. We're excited at the progress so far, but the destination is still very, very far away. India has just 6-7% penetration of e-commerce. We want to get it to a much higher percentage.
What's the percentage you're targeting?
Look, we speak in population scale, right? So you look at any digital infrastructure the country is creating, you want to speak in a few 100 million people at the very least. And so that's the kind of penetration we would like to see on buyer and seller side. Today, less than 1% of sellers are digitized, and barely 5 to 10% of shoppers are shopping online. So it's a really a niche idea. From an India perspective, like e-commerce is niche, and we want to make it mass.
Okay. Now, my next
Varun,
direct question. Sorry, just one more before you go to Varun. Shireesh, one more question. How long do you see this deep discounting to get consumers to flock on ONDC continuing? I know you would not have much role to play in that. It would be more on the platforms which are using ONDC already, or the restaurants stroke other partners which are delivering using the ONDC value chain. But how long do you see this deep discount, which is actually impressing the consumers right now, continuing?
So the goal of whatever is taking place is not to impress consumers. The goal is for them to
impress was a mild word. Onboarding customers is what I meant.
Customer acquisition, let's put it that way.
See, a lot of people have a lot of questions because they've never seen e-commerce in an unbundled fashion. They're used to one single entity doing everything. And because of all those questions, some of them hesitate to try. Now, because of this, a lot of people have tried. We're getting thousands of orders which were booked on one application. The order was placed on a restaurant that is sitting on another application. A third party came and picked it up and delivered it within 45 minutes. And all of that seamless transaction is taking place. So all the theoretical objections that people had are suddenly gone. So it's less about the discounts and more the evidence that, hey, you're able to order food in this unbundled fashion, it's getting delivered, and you're having a good experience. So it's more establishing that ONDC is not theory, that it really works, and here's evidence. It's not going to be about discounting. Discounting happens to be a current news for some items in some comparison. But long-term ONDC is really going to be just fundamental, efficient way of doing e-commerce, and more importantly, a flexible system that allows many models to be created seamlessly without people having to build those individual components. I think in the earlier part of the conversation, I think it was you who mentioned ChatGPT. Now think about it. ChatGPT could function simply because there is so much information that's already freely available on which it could be taught stuff. if all that information had to be bought and sold, it would not be profitable. So I think this idea of building public good, public digital infrastructure on which businesses can ride makes the overall system much more efficient and creates much more innovation. And that's really the goal. So yes, it's nice that some people are, getting food or specific food items at lower price than alternatives, but that's neither the purpose nor the goal. It's only a small stepping stone to a much larger and much more exciting journey.
Okay, what's the purpose and goal before I go to Varun because he's wanting to speak for a while?
Population scale e-commerce penetration. We want everybody to buy and sell on ONDC.
Okay.
And when I say everyone, I mean everyone and everything.
All right. Varun?
Hey, hi. So I would like to firstly tell Shireesh that the National Restaurant Association of India is really excited. Okay, any steps to break the duopoly, we welcome at in every end, and we would love to be a part of ONDC Pan India. We have a good reach. We already have around 5 restaurateurs who are attached with us, and we would be happy to extend all the support possible. I would like to ask one question, Shireesh, that what happens with Zomato and Swiggy to have a higher visibility for a restaurant? What happens is that they generally end up paying to Zomato and Swiggy to be, shown higher on the order where the customers can place the order. Let's say today you searched for cold coffee and McDonald's popped up. So multiple other brands also pop up at the same length initially on the first or the second screen. So it increases the order strength. Does ONDC also plan to do something like this, or how would you be able to? What is the algo which you are using for the visibility point of view for brands?
So first of all, we're not using any algorithm. And I think what you have to realize is behavior is also based on context. When you have a closed network and a closed network that starts accumulating scale and you have only a couple of players who do that, then it is both two things. It is a source of commerce. It is also an audience to which an advertisement can be placed. Right? Both are present in a single place. And so brands are doing both because an audience present, they are spending money in quote unquote advertising or building their awareness. And they're also spending money as a commercial platform. Now, when you disaggregate this, right, and think about it like the neighborhood stores, where would you have to advertise to, in neighborhood stores to be able to get to consumers? You wouldn't because it's completely disaggregated and it's not needed. The whole role of advertising came up simply because there was a central intermediary which was trying to bring everything into one place and then leverage that for advertising. Once it is decentralized, there will be 5 different ways, Varun, in which the same restaurant will reach you because you have all those 4 or 5 applications on your phone. Now, which of those 5 should they advertise to reach you? Today, because it's only a couple of them, it makes sense to do that. So as the number of players increase, even the need to advertise through a particular application will go down. And it will be good old days of brands building with consumers. And the channel is simply facilitating the purchase, whichever channel you come through.
Varun, I want to ask you one question at this stage. Tell me something. How do you see your own operational expenses going up with, let's say, ditching the likes of Swiggy and Zomato, which are taking care of the logistics, and going on to ONDC, where presumably you will need to now employ riders of your own or partner with maybe other emerging aggregators of riders which are going to service your orders, and that becomes a direct cost for your business.
Well, it does, but let's say for my particular brands, we already have been having a delivery strength. We already have a delivery force who's taking care of this particular the process. Now it boils down, yeah, it does make a difference because a lot of small outlets will not be able to hold a delivery sort of mechanism. However, there are multiple other people like Dunzo, like other places which are already providing delivery services to these restaurants. A lot of people who are already into direct delivery are using these platforms to send their delivery orders. So I don't think it's going to be that big an issue initially, but yeah, later on, as compared to the order strength, definitely it may or may not impact some vendors for sure, some restaurant or some food delivery outlets for sure, who will be thinking this, because this is like a weakness in the system which has generated which I feel that ONDC or the restaurant owners or the food owners would really need to think about it. But let's say majority are already looking at co-collaborating, and I feel with more number of delivery apps which will be generating, this particular issue can get solved easily.
you see this sort of democratic process becoming partly at some level undemocratic for the smaller players whose operational expenses may go up, and they may actually be willing to pay a higher commission to the larger aggregator apps like Swiggy and Zomato instead of investing in their own supply chain?
Is this to me or to Lloyd?
Lloyd.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Kartik. Yeah, so I think that's the charm of a free and an open marketplace, Kartik. So I fully agree with that. But in a sense, as Shireesh pointed out, I think that the whole idea is to actually broad base the number of e-commerce shoppers or users. We're talking of still a single digit 5, 7, 9%, whatever. That when you talk of population level scale, you're actually talking of getting it to the next level. So in a manner of speaking, it's like if you look at the existing marketplaces, they are like the big malls where you get to shop with a set of brands. I think right now you're talking about this being in the neighborhood marketplace, right? So it's like literally walking into a neighborhood and having everyone participate there. Every seller's stuff is now available.
Yeah, but will the small sellers, but Lloyd, will the small sellers find it cost prohibitive to go ahead and employ their own fleet of riders to deliver orders which are coming to them through the ONDC network?
Yeah, so we're assuming that every one of them will have to provide their own fleet of riders and not take access to third-party logistics platforms who do that last-mile delivery, right? And for them, again, it's a cost-benefit analysis. Should I be part of a big platform that's going to squeeze about 25-30% of my margin with no access to my end user who I can target separately? Or do I get, hopefully a more competitive third-party logistics provider who can do this at about, say, 10 or 15%, so I still get that additional margin play? I think that's what every business will have to take a choice on. But therefore, what it does is actually disaggregates the system to everyone's advantage.
So
and
does
I think
it mean the more
consumers will certainly have, yeah.
So does it mean, Lloyd, the more we change, the more we stay the same? That's exactly the kind of environment we were in about 5-7 years ago. Before the advent of Swiggy, Zomato, every restaurant had their own delivery agents, had their pamphlets dropped at your doorstep. You made them a call, and end-to-end logistics was their baby completely. And now it's just that there's a layer of technology which is getting them to do exactly the same thing that they were doing earlier.
Not quite, Kartik. I'll give you a classic example. About 10 years back, we all had our favorite neighborhood taxi wala, right? You knew a guy who would call and say, I want to go to the airport. And it kind of got done inefficiently. Sometimes he charged you crazy prices. Now, we all just whip out our app and we choose 2 or 3 of those major operators and we quickly get that done. Right? The fact that it's got democratized and there's always a cabbie near you willing to come for a hire, and there's a bit of a price competition. And when 2 players get too comfortable and get monopolistic, then you have a third player who comes and disrupts the system by saying that we have employed cabs and so on. So I think the more players, the more efficient the system becomes. And the moment you broad base the number of users, I think it makes it much more easy. Right? So I would say 10 years back, I would say, let's say there was 2% of Indians who kind of used private taxis. I think with the coming of Uber, Ola, and maybe Blue Smart, whatever, you're actually having a lot more people who are able to participate, and competition is bringing about its own efficiencies, which I think is the whole sole purpose of what ONDC is doing. Right? They're going to make the e-commerce pie much larger, have many more players come in, have many more users come in, and I think long term it's only beneficial to us all.
Okay, hopefully long term beneficial to everybody, but absolutely making the e-commerce pie larger. A lot of people very kicked, excited about ONDC and what it has to offer. In fact, Twitter and every other platform out there, social media is flooded with how you can buy something on ONDC. It's going to be much cheaper. That, of course, is on the consumer side. On businesses side, a lot of excitement on what ONDC will offer as a platform. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us. Shireesh, Varun, Lloyd, Kartik here. Thanks very much for taking your time out and for joining us on that very important story. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Business Plus. Keep watching Newsline.